All right, what is going on, everybody? We are back. We're going to be doing some more of this ultimate survival world TrixyBlox is creating here, and we're going to look more into the the movie, the story behind it, the lore. So it's going to be amazing. This is part 2. I think they're going to be talking about the desert. I can't wait to watch this with you guys. We'll see you soon. All right, here we go, guys. This is Steph Block's channel. She's doing the lore, the story behind the ultimate survival world and all the biomes. I think this time we're going to be checking out the desert. She's going to be telling us a story. The first one was great. If anything, it was just too short. So, hopefully in this one, I think this is a longer one. So we're going to hear some more. All right. Like I said, thanks for coming and watching this with me. I can't wait. Let's go.
Over the past 8 months, we've been upgrading the entirety of Minecraft to create the ultimate survival world. Across this enormous 16 million block map, we're transforming every biome and structure in the game.
I still can't get over
Minecraft
16 million blocks.
Backstory, all to create the craziest possible Minecraft experience for you guys. Here on the JEFFERSCRAFT channel, we're going to jump right back into this crazy world we've created
and
follow
wait.
the epic adventures of the USW in a series of mini-movies, covering each of these breathtaking biomes in turn. Today, we find ourselves in the desert biome, unraveling its myths and legends, learning about its people, uncovering the dark mysteries surrounding the evil pharaoh and his collection of...
Yeah, so I was right. This is going to be about the desert, so I'm really looking forward to this. This was an amazing build too. He made like the eyes of Anubis or something like that on the big pyramid with the big skull. So, man, this is going to be so fun to play. All right, so enough of me. Let's do it.
Treasures. And following a brave villager on a crazy nail-biting adventure. After the convergence and the eradication of the USW's dangerous creatures, you may remember that the population began to blossom and diversify.
Yeah.
As life in the USW grew more complex and varied over the centuries, several ancient indigenous civilizations arose in different biomes. Several of these civilizations existed simultaneously in the USW. The Yanoa tribe, which built the ancient jungle city, thrived in the heart of the jungle, and the...
Oh man, I just want to say I didn't want to talk over her story, but this jungle, like I've said it many times before, but it's so awesome. Like the work he did on this is just, I can't even believe it. I don't even think I could even attempt to do something like this. So just bow down to that, you know what I mean? Dang. All right, here we go.
Now beautiful abandoned city develops an intricate culture of traditions and conventions, some of which live on in the descendants' nearby village. The wolf tribe emerged in the mesa, nurturing the land for centuries, and forging the interbiome mining network with the jungle and the desert, before being forced into the savannah by the USW outlaws many years later.
That is so cool.
The bone tribe originated in the savannah and were famous for their bone armor, created from the remains of an enormous primeval creature eliminated by the first members of their tribe. In the snowy mountains, the Yagulu tribe also prospered, equally fabled for their delicious fish and the thrilling tales that they would piece together from the natural lights occasionally appearing in the USW's skies.
Ooh.
Last but not least, that brings us to the desert, which is the feature of this chapter, playing host to the people of the ancient Sandstone Village. Long before the desert town we see today was even contemplated, the ancient Sandstone Village was built by the native people of the desert. The ancient Sandstone Village currently lies in ruins in front of the Grand Desert Temple. But it wasn't always this way. It was once a bustling village rich in culture and tradition, led to a devastating fate by its greedy, narcissistic ruler. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's start a little closer to the beginning. We can get wrapped up in all the chaos and destruction after that. During the earlier periods, war raged on between the biomes. Inevitably, territories clashed, as did differing ideologies and cultures across the USW. The desert and mesa warred over their border, and the jungle and desert warred over the USW's southern waters. After many years of unrest, the wolf tribe of the mesa, the Yanoa tribe of the jungle city, and the Sandstone Village of the desert made peace agreements, later leading to amicable relationships and further trade agreements. This particular aspect of the USW story is not dissimilar to our world's history, as the first ever peace treaty on record was in fact forged by the ancient Egyptians, who inspired some aspects of our USW's desert biome. Anyway, each of these USW civilizations realised that they needed one another to prosper and thrive, even if they were divided culturally and could survive alone. The Unoa tribe shared the jungle's wood, the Wolf tribe shared the mesa's gold and coal, and the Sandstone Village shared their knowledge in medicine and architecture. Together, they forged the interbiome mining network over centuries, creating an intricate web of mines connecting their biomes to strengthen their collective resources. In fact, the relationship between the desert and the jungle grows even stronger later in this story, when the Sandstone...
So hold on. Just wanted to say, so now we know, TrixyBlox told us about the interconnecting mining system, but now we know how it came to be, right, with the treaty. So that's cool. I love that. All right, here we go.
Sandstone Village falls into great peril, but we'll turn to that shortly. So, what do we know about the Sandstone Village? How did they live? What did they believe in? If you're a mythology nerd, some of this segment may sound a little familiar. The people of the Sandstone Village had a rich culture filled with thrilling tales passed through generations and a variety of traditions still observed today.
Look at that.
At night, the village folk would gather around their campfires, telling their children many tales, including the journey of the sun. It was said that the sun god would rest for 12 hours each day in the overworld realm, lighting up the sky until dusk. At dusk, the moon goddess would guard the overworld realm, whilst the sun god would venture into the underworld, fighting off the 12 demons of the nether, one for each hour of the night. The village folk would tell their children that these 12 demons related to 12 different negative traits, including deception, envy, and greed, and that the demons were fueled by the prominence of these traits in the overworld.
That's cool.
Essentially, it was a scary bedtime story to teach their kids not to be naughty, otherwise a demon from the underworld would come to eat them. But perhaps there is a little truth to this tale. I guess we shall find out before the desert chapter is up. Many of the Sandstone people's traditions were enshrined in rituals. Many of the village folk kept their own pets, and it was a Sandstone tradition to hold an annual festival known as the Festival of the Jackal.
That's cool, man.
Celebrating their beloved animals with contests, music, parades, and a grand feast for both the humans and the pets.
Look at all the colors, man. Love it.
Another tradition followed by the Sandstone villagers was a journey down south to the ocean every other full moon for a cleansing ritual. The ritual would take place under the moonlight as the villagers would wash away any negativity burdening them, all under the watchful eye of the moon goddess. It was said that this ritual would strip an individual of any negative traits that they were carrying with them, allowing them to return home with a clear mind, and thus maintaining the balance in positive and negative energy to keep the 12 demons of the nether from entering the overworld. The pharaoh of the desert did not attend the cleansing, as he believed that it was beneath him. He viewed himself as flawless. Instead, he created his own far more grisly ritual.
Look at that.
Which he believed best served him and his personal relationship with the gods. Every year, the pharaoh demanded a sacrifice from the village, believing that this would please the gods and protect him and his collection of treasures from harm. This started with smaller offerings, but as the pharaoh grew hungrier for power, he believed that greater sacrifices would grant him better protection. With each passing year, the sacrifices he demanded evolved from food, to animals, and eventually to one person from the village.
Oh my
The
gosh.
tribute selection would occur 1 week before the sacrifice in the centre of the village, where the villagers would be forced to gather before the pharaoh's messenger. Since the sacrifice was intended to please the gods, the selection process was said to be left to their will. The messenger would pick up a small pebble from the ground and catapult it into the air. It was said that the person tapped on the head by the stone was chosen by the gods to fulfill the annual sacrifice, and anyone who avoided the pebble was deemed to have disrespected the gods, leading to harsh punishment. So, you may have gathered that the Sandstone village and the entire desert territory was led by...
So, harsh punishment or being sacrificed, being killed? I think I would choose the punishment, you know what I mean? I don't know though.
an evil pharaoh. But he wasn't always this way. His ancestors forged the interbiome mining network with the mesa and the jungle, and his initial approach to leadership was similarly fair and diplomatic. Over the years, his greed grew and grew, and he became known across the USW as the collector of treasures.
Look at all that.
He would stop at nothing to seek out the rarest jewels and most fabled artifacts in the land, eventually setting his sights on the legendary Scarab Amulet.
Uh-oh.
The Scarab Amulet was known amongst the Sandstone folk as nothing more than a myth, the subject of bedtime stories to teach their children key life lessons and values, much like the story of the Journey of the Sun. However, the pharaoh was convinced that the story was true and spent years sending his best warriors to search for the amulet. After many years of searching, the amulet was discovered near the desert's entrance to the interbiome mining network.
Got it.
Hidden in a cave. Despite the pharaoh's agreements with the Mesa and the jungle to share any resources or treasures discovered in the caves, the pharaoh took the amulet for himself and wore it every day. To him, it was a constant reminder of all he had achieved, but perhaps he hadn't realised how powerful the amulet could be. The amulet was said to be forged by the gods, rumoured to amplify the most prominent traits of the wearer. Saturated in his own vanity, the pharaoh believed that his strongest traits were strength and nobility, but the amulet could see the truth.
Greed, huh?
After years of focusing on his collection of treasures, the pharaoh had grown an immense greed, and the amulet took hold of this greed, amplifying it even further. The Sandstone villagers began to fear for their safety as the pharaoh's cruelty worsened each day. Eventually, the evil pharaoh forced the villagers to upgrade his temple, adding several of the grand features that are still intact today. Unlike his ancestors, who employed paid labourers to construct the original temple, the pharaoh forced the villagers to carry out his desired upgrades with no pay and exhausting hours.
Dang, man.
Once again, the pharaoh was blinded by his greed. The pharaoh believed that his grand temple containing his collection of treasures required certain details to ensure he and his precious collection remained safe. He believed that the menacing skull at its entrance, with fires lit in its eyes, would deter thieves or attackers from seeking entrance to the temple, sending a strong message to all those who would consider challenging him, indicating what their fate would be if they tried.
Dang, man.
He also demanded that the eyes of the sun god and the moon goddess were to be etched into the two large pillars at the front of the temple.
That's
as he
awesome.
believed that this would grant the building and its precious contents protection during both the day and the night. Taking his paranoia even further, the evil pharaoh requested that the statues of some of his most fearsome warriors were to stand in the pillars above the protective eyes of the sun and moon gods, serving as a further warning to potential attackers. And to sprinkle the entire upgrade with a little narcissism and self-importance, the pharaoh demanded that several snake symbols were to be added to the remaining pillar walls, symbolising royalty and reminding the Sandstone villagers of his importance and superiority.
Oh, man.
Sandstone villagers were growing weary of the evil pharaoh and his cruelty, and it was becoming apparent that all these tensions would reach a devastating climax before too long.
Yeah, they'd have to, right?
And that leads us to the story of Asim and Urema, the heroes of this woeful tale. This is Asim, a gentle young man born into a family of farmers who dedicated much of his life to taking care of his mother and sister. One day, the evil pharaoh's villainy burst Asim's little bubble, turning his and his family's life upside down. The pharaoh's warriors had discovered a new vein of emerald, the pharaoh's favourite gemstone, in a branch off of the interbiome mining network's hub. The pharaoh demanded that all agreements with the jungle and mesa should be disregarded, and the mining team should be doubled, focusing on mining as much of the emerald as possible for the pharaoh's personal collection of treasures.
Oh my gosh.
Unfortunately for Asim, he was selected to join the desert's team of miners, tearing him away from his family and the life that he loved. This was especially difficult for Asim and his family, because they had lost Asim's father in a mining accident just 2 years before, when he was stationed in the mines temporarily,
Oh, crap.
once again to please the pharaoh and his greed for collecting treasures. As much as he wished it would never arrive, Asim's first day on the mining team soon came around, and he said a reluctant goodbye to his family before collecting his quota from the head guard and making his way to the mines.
That's terrible.
Each week,
Terrible.
the mining team would head to the mines, spending 6 days there. They would return home for just 1 day, hauling back all the materials they had mined throughout the week and having their quotas checked by the pharaoh's guards. Frightened that he wouldn't meet his quota, particularly given that he'd had no training or guidance, Asim tentatively got to work on the emerald vein. The more experienced members of the team spared no time to assist the beginners, They were too concerned with meeting their quotas, which were twice as demanding as the Sims. Before long, and to the desert miners' surprise, a division of the jungle mining team arrived. Wise to the Pharaoh's tricks, they had stationed their own miners at the emerald source, so that they could share the emerald with the Mesa.
Oh yeah.
Sim continued working, desperately trying to work out the best way to meet his quota, before feeling a gentle tap on his shoulder. He turned around in a panic, only to see the endearing smile of a woman from the jungle mining team. She beckoned him with a charming nod as she walked over to the emerald source, and began to teach him all she knew to help him meet his quota.
Oh, that's cool.
Shocked by this seemingly random act of kindness, Sim listened carefully and tried to learn as much as he could. At this point, Sim had no idea that this one simple act of kindness from this mysterious stranger would change his life forever. This stranger is Urema, a strong young woman who just so happens to be the daughter of the Jungle King.
Okay.
In the jungle, life was far different to that which the desert people had experienced, and Urema was free to explore her passions despite being literal royalty. She was unyieldingly kind, devoting her time to her people and remaining incredibly humble despite her privileged background. But we'll hear more about that in the jungle chapter.
Way different, huh?
During their long days of hard work, Sim and Urema became great friends. They helped one another, told each other stories, and learned about their differing ways of life. Urema told Sim all about her people and their traditions, and how her father rules the jungle as a kind, devoted ruler. In contrast, Sim told Urema about the cruelty of the evil pharaoh, and the horrors shocked her to her core.
Yeah,
Their bond grew incredibly strong despite their different backgrounds, and they even inspired the rest of their respective teams to help one another. Living and working together meant that they spent a long time in each other's company, and the teams grew much closer thanks to Sim and Urema's bond. They had encouraged the other miners to be more open-minded about mixing and embracing one another, and this made their hard work a little less grueling each day. After many long weeks of hard work, the time had come for the tribute selection for the evil pharaoh's annual sacrifice. Sim returned home after a long week of mining, confident that his quota was met thanks to the help of Urema. It's gonna be like
his mother or something.
To see his mother and sister, even if they would have to attend the tribute selection. He embraced his family upon his return, and they reluctantly headed to the tribute selection together. The trio gathered with the rest of the Sandstone villagers, waiting anxiously for the pharaoh's messenger to commence the selection process. In the usual way, the messenger plucked a pebble from the ground, placing it in his catapult, and aiming it up at the sky above the crowd of eerily silent villagers before him. The stone was flung high into the air as the villagers below watched in suspense. Sim stood behind his sister, watching the pebble tumble, almost in slow motion towards them both. Instinctively, before he could even think about what was happening, he protected his dear little sister, jumping in front of her to shield her from the pebble. The pebble had tapped him on the head instead, and the realization crept over him like a dark cloud.
Oh no.
He was this year's sacrifice.
That's terrible, huh? Dang, man.
The rest of the day flew past before Sim could even process what had happened. The next morning arrived, and it was time for Sim to leave his family already. None of them could comprehend that this would be one of the last times they would see one another.
Man.
Vacant and distracted, Sim made his way to the mines for one last week of work before the sacrifice. His fellow miners rallied around him on the journey, trying to do all they could to lift his spirits, but to no avail. They arrived at the emerald vein they had been stationed at for weeks, and the jungle miners immediately knew that something was wrong. They gathered around as Sim's friends explained what had happened, whilst Sim stood in silence, barely able to hold back the tears. For Urema, this was the final straw. She could no longer sit idly by as the people of the Sandstone Village suffered their pharaoh's cruelty.
She's gonna do something, huh?
And so, the revolution began.
The revolution!
Urema rallied her mining comrades, both those from the jungle and the desert, including Sim, of course. All angered by the pharaoh's brutality, they banded together, agreeing to put a stop to his rule over the desert. Urema sent word to her father in the jungle, requesting his support, and they soon received the provisions and weapons they needed to succeed. Urema and Sim spent days planning their attack. Urema had a deep understanding of battle strategy, and Sim knew the desert like the back of his hand, including the guard rotations. They split their fellow miners into groups, briefing them on the plan of attack and their respective positions.
Oh yeah, fight back.
Before long, the week was almost up. To ensure that the plan was as unexpected as possible, the revolting miners decided to attack the day before they were usually due to return, accompanied by the jungle miners, also armed with their weapons. the day of the revolution had arrived, and the miners set off to liberate the Sandstone Village.
Yeah, right on, dude. They're gonna go fight back,
in
man.
the desert, this was also the day the people realised that the journey of the sun that we explored earlier was more than just a bedtime story. And the horrors that followed are still recalled in tales across the entire island. The self-indulgence of the pharaoh had fueled the nether demon of greed, empowering it so much that it was able to access the overworld. It called out to the pharaoh, pretending to be the voice of a god, convincing him to lay out 3 wither skulls from his treasure collection and perform a special ritual to put an end to the betrayal he had suspected the people of the Sandstone Village had been plotting. The pharaoh blindly followed these instructions, desperate to maintain his power and keep hold of his collection of treasures.
Oh man, destruction's coming, huh?
He performed the ritual, and right before his eyes spawned a demon. It was the Wither, the demon of greed. Frightened by the appearance of the demon, and slightly dubious about the promises it had made him, he retreated to the entrance of his temple. He watched with glee as the Wither attacked the villagers. Asim, Urema, and the rebel miners arrived just in time.
Fight it, man.
Desperate change of plan, the miners dispersed, some attempting to fight off the Wither, others trying to usher the panicked village folk and their beloved animals to the interbiome mine entrance and into safety. The desert fell into chaos.
Yeah, of course, the Wither, man. Destructive, man. Destructive.
The Wither laid waste to the Sandstone Village, and it was left in ruins.
Man.
In a serious case of poetic justice, the Wither turned on the pharaoh after destroying everything else in its path. To this day, it is said that the pharaoh's shrieks can be heard through the winds of the desert.
Yeah,
his
chasing that.
Of treasures is said to be hidden somewhere in the USW, only retrievable by an adventurer brave enough to take on the pirate's treasure hunt.
Man, look at that.
The real question is, what happened to the Wither? How were the desert people able to return home eventually? Well, some say the Wither was defeated by the Protector, a fierce, noble hero from the Snowy Mountains, but that's a tale for a later chapter. And with the Wither defeated years later, the remaining people of the Sandstone Village, including Asim's little sister and her pet cactus, were able to return to their home biome. With the help of the jungle, hence the extensive use of jungle wood seen in the architecture, a new desert village was born, and to this day, it is thriving more than ever before.
Beautiful.
To remember those they lost to the Wither, the Sandstone people planted palm trees along their streets, each symbolising a lost member of the village. Asim and his family, now a little older, live in this quaint little house with their very own flock of sheep for company.
He's a hero, man.
Asim still heads to the mines every so often to visit Urema and his mining friends, and their bond is stronger than ever. Without it, the Sandstone Village would have been lost that day, and the Pharaoh's reign may have continued to ruin the lives of many. As for Urema, we will of course discover more about her story and much more when we come to the jungle chapter. But for now, our adventures in the desert have drawn to a close. And so that just about wraps up the second chapter of our USW story.
All right, guys, that was cool. That was great. I mean, the first one, like I said, it was good, but it was just too short. So this one added a lot of story to this and explained some things, you know, that about the builds and, you know, everything behind it. So I can't wait now to see what's next. Hopefully it's the jungle one, but you know, whatever it is, I'm sure it's gonna be great. This is real good. I thank you for coming and watching this with me, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and we will see you next time. Okay, I'm gonna be doing another upload next Wednesday. I'm not sure exactly of what. I might do some TrixyBlox, some older builds, you know, something like that. So look forward to that, and have a good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you later. Peace.